Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the awards ceremony of this year's German Jewish History Awards. A special welcome goes to you, Judith Obermayer, and your sons, Henry and Joel. A warm welcome to the members of the jury, all of tonight's awardees, and the prize winners of the past 2 decades. Members of the diplomatic corps, Deputy President Pau, members of the German Bundestag and the Berlin House of Representatives, Senator Dr. Behrendt, Permanent Secretary Schäbli. A warm welcome also to all former members of parliament, especially former Speaker Reinhard Führer, who did play a role in bringing the award ceremony here to the Berlin House of Representatives 19 years ago. Representatives of the Central Council of Jews in Germany and the Berlin Jewish community. On the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, it is a great honor and delight for me to be able to welcome Jewish survivors here tonight. Mr. and Mrs. Katz, Mr. and Mrs. Michalski, I am more than delighted to have you here tonight. This day, ladies and gentlemen, is truly a momentous day. 75 years ago today, the concentration camp Auschwitz was liberated by the Red Army. And even though war was not over on January 27th, 1945, this day of remembrance has a symbolic power because it centers the commemoration on the acts of barbarism committed against German Jews in Germany and Europe. And we still stand in silence on this day and ask for the reasons of this collective killing of over 6 million Jews. Unfortunately, this is absolutely essential today in Germany, not only in everyday life or online. Everywhere, insults and incidents, crimes and acts of terror in Germany are on the increase. We Democrats, our hands challenged once more. We must and we will take this seriously, because different than in the 1920s, it is clear we will nip it in the bud, and with resolution so. With all the suffering that we Germans inflicted upon others under Nazi dictatorship, it is a question of decency to refrain from historic misrepresentation and fiddling with history, one should think. But it's not the case. Meanwhile, right-wing extremist networks have been founded that pose a huge threat to Jews too. The attack at the synagogue in Halle really brought home to all of us what it means. No, anti-Semitism has not disappeared or vanished from Germany. It is still alive here. It is part of our society. And as a society, we are called upon not to belittle it. And this day of remembrance goes to underscore this. It shouldn't be only about triggering feelings of guilt. It should be about emphasizing the value of freedom that is today enshrined in our society, a freedom that people did not have under Nazi dictatorship, let alone the countless victims. And yes, January 27th will always also be a day of reflection. For us here at the House of Representatives, this day is also a day of friendship. And I'm referring to the friendship to and with the Obermayer Foundation. It goes back almost 20 years. That's how long the foundation and the Berlin Parliament have been working together on the presentation of the German Jewish History Awards. And I'm grateful that we have been honoring people here at the Berlin House of Representatives, people or initiatives that have made outstanding contributions to the research of Jewish history and culture. By doing so, there's one thing we show very clearly, that Jewish life has always been part of Germany. But it becomes clear that our shared history cannot be reduced only to the Holocaust. That was the approach taken by Arthur Obermeyer, the founder of the awards and the foundation. And it is a shame that Arthur Obermeyer is no longer with us. And at the same time, I'm delighted that you, Judith Obermeyer, have come to Berlin once again this year to participate in the awards ceremony. You and your sons, Hank and Joel, continue the legacy of your husband, and we are very happy about this. Thank you very much. The awards will today be conferred for the 20th time, and because of the anniversary, there will also be anniversary awards, which is why there will be more prize winners this year than before. I would like to congratulate the awardees already. Very impressive works have been submitted again this year. Not all of them could be distinguished. And yet I would like to thank all of the participants for their historiographic work or their cultural contributions. There's no doubt the German Jewish History Awards also pay tribute to modern local historical research as long as it is relevant to Jewish history and culture. This award hence promotes a long history of German historiography and historical research that goes back to the 19th century. The fact that the Obermeyer Foundation has been supporting this development year after year is remarkable and deserves our appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, remembrance work has been part of our work for a long time. And it shapes our identity, the way we are. Of course, history doesn't repeat itself, but we can learn from it. And it serves as a warning, especially on January 27th. So let us never again accept that fundamental basic rights are trampled upon. Let us never again accept that Germans revere an inhumane state founded on injustice. And let us never again accept that anti-Semitism in Germany becomes a dominant ideology again. Thank you very much.
President Wieland, award winners, honored guests, I am thrilled to be with you on this 20th anniversary of the presentation of the Obermeyer Awards. It is an occasion to celebrate and a good time to reflect on where we've been and where we are now. The grandparents of my husband, Arthur Obermeyer, all came from southern Germany. In researching his genealogy, he found Germans in many places working to show the role Jews had played in the history of their local region. They were volunteering great amounts of time, working to recover this lost chapter of Germany's past. Their communities did not always appreciate these projects. Arthur started the awards to acknowledge their extraordinary efforts with two aims: to give credibility and value to the work within Germany, and to make these efforts known to the world outside of Germany, especially in the Jewish community. We were never sure how long the awards would last. We just knew that we would not continue the awards if we did not have truly worthy candidates. As you can see from this year's winners, we have not run into that problem. In addition, the awards have obtained a level of prestige that we could not have predicted. I believe part of that is due to the sponsorship of the Berlin Parliament, which has given us a significant level of public exposure. I would like to thank President Wieland for his unwavering support. Thank you. However, we are now in a different world. Hate is on the rise. Racism, far-right nationalism, anti-Semitism, and other forms of hate are growing in places where we never imagined they would be. Just continuing as we have is not enough. We need a much more aggressive approach to deal with this reality. In 2019, the Obermayer Foundation launched a new division, Widen the Circle, to reflect the importance of the fight today. Widen the Circle oversees the Overmeyer Awards and works to combat prejudice by fostering a shared understanding of the past. One way to fight present-day prejudice in local communities is to help the people there reckon with the history that allowed prejudice to grow. Widen the Circle seeks to help people doing this work grow their impact, both through this award and by helping to connect them with others facing similar challenges. We have begun to implement these ideas under the leadership of my son, Joel Obermeyer, who is now the executive director of Widen the Circle. To mark the 20th anniversary, the awards have expanded. The new anniversary awards focus on those who, through innovative efforts, find ways to use the lessons of history to fight against current prejudice and racism. They are changing attitudes as well as fostering understanding that prevents prejudice from taking root. They are often working in places with significant challenges, are dedicated to creating a better world, and are truly inspiring. It is with great pride that I now ask Joel to tell us more about Widen the Circle and the impact we hope to have.
There are so many people here who have contributed to the work we've done this year and this night who deserve to be thanked and their contributions acknowledged. In fact, I could be doing it for quite a long time. I'm going to do a lot of that later with each of you in a personal way because of some things I want to make sure that all of you know. So right now I want to just add a few words about Widen the Circle, and then tell you a story. So the work we've been talking about is not about prestige, it's about impact. Right now we think about impact in 3 distinct ways, and we expect to find more. Recognizing extraordinary work in unexpected places, amplifying it with our network and capabilities, and I hope many of you here will become part of our network, and inspiring similar work in Germany and elsewhere in the world. Now for us, inspiration is not just a word, because we have seen what inspiration can do. I understand many Germans who do remembrance work believe that the Holocaust is so singular and so horrific that it can't be compared to other things, and that makes sense. Many believe their projects matter on a local level, and they may show the projects to local groups and to visitors, but it never occurs to them that a small remembrance project could be a positive example someplace else. That would be like patting yourself on the back for something that came from the Holocaust, and you just can't do that. So there's another way of thinking about that same idea, which is that these same people often don't think that their work matters in anything but a local way. So the thing is, they are wrong, and I know it. In our work, we have seen a connection between very specific remembrance work here in Berlin and work in the United States. This connection shows that remembrance work here can matter in ways that are impossible to predict. In fact, it's something that's almost impossible to imagine if you haven't seen it. So I want to show it to you. To know how this connection happened, you need to know about 2 things. The first is the work of one of our awardees, Krista Nicholson. She won the Obermayer Award in 2012. She was the principal of the Lucknitz Elementary School in the Schöneberg neighborhood of Berlin. And Krista created a powerful personal experience for her students and a powerful memorial. For 25 years, her students have been building a wall of yellow bricks in commemoration of Jews who lived in the neighborhood of the school who were murdered during the war. Some of you here may already be familiar with the project. So we have documented that this wall of bricks has been a key inspiration for a project 5,000 miles away on a hill in Montgomery, Alabama. I'd like to show you that inspiration in just a moment. The second thing you need to understand is who is an American named Bryan Stevenson. He's an African-American lawyer and a top civil rights leader in the US. Some of you here may know his memoir, which in English is called Just Mercy, in German is Ohne Gnade, and it has been turned into a major Hollywood motion picture. Bryan Stevenson himself can tell you about this connection, this inspiration, far better than I can, and we were lucky enough just a couple of weeks ago to interview him in Alabama. And I hope we have a film ready to show.
I think it's important that we recognize the activities of people who are pushing our communities, our neighborhoods, our nations to not only remember, but to appreciate what's important about these memories, what's significant, what was lost, and what we need to learn and what we need to gain. We are trying to change the narrative in the American South. Our landscape is littered with the iconography of the Confederacy. The architects and defenders of slavery are actually romanticized and celebrated. We have holidays dedicated to the memory of people who were perpetrators of some of these great atrocities. We haven't talked very much about slavery. We haven't talked about lynching. We don't talk about the Jim Crow and segregation that humiliated and marginalized so many. And so I think that has to change. And I've been really interested in trying to understand, how do we change the narrative? How do we overcome this history of violence and bigotry and racism and destruction? And in that effort, I've been able to travel. And the most meaningful thing I did was I went to Germany. And my time in Berlin was transformational. And I walked around the city and I encountered the stumbling stones, which disrupted the landscape in this really powerful way. It became clear to me that you can't go very far in Berlin without seeing symbols, signs, monuments, markers, memorials that are designed to make sure that we never forget what happened during that terrible time. And then I had the extraordinary experience in my walking around to encounter this simple but powerful wall of yellow bricks put together by children. It was the hopefulness of a generation of young people feeling the need to express their grief, their sorrow, but their hope that we never again tolerate the kind of bigotry and bias that gave rise to the Holocaust. And knowing that this yellow wall, and I like that it's yellow, it has the kind of energy of youth, it has the kind of hopefulness of youth to respond in their own unique way to the challenges created by this history, this past. And in many ways, it has been a source of inspiration for the work that we're now trying to do. We are trying to disrupt the landscape in the American South. We want to complicate these ideas that things were wonderful and glorious during the time of enslavement or lynching. And seeing the stumbling stones, seeing the stones has been one of the most meaningful influences in that work. We also decided to build the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, which is a 6-acre site dedicated to thousands of victims of lynching. It's the first comprehensive memorial to victims of lynching in America. And we name these thousands of people because for too long they've been unknown. They've never been remembered. And we tell a story about the weight of that era. And when you enter our memorial, the monuments, which are 6 feet tall, that replicate the human body in one way, they're rectangular, but they're also scarred and blemished, and we have the names of people organized by county, and you encounter them in the first quarter at eye level. We want you to have that intimacy, and I've been there, and I've seen families that have come back to the American South to look for their loved one's name, and you see people embracing those monuments, and it's very powerful. And then in the second quarter, these monuments begin to rise because this history still hovers over us, it shadows us. And when you get to the third quarter, you see all of these monuments suspended because the tragedy of this era was that those who perpetrated this violence didn't try to hide it. They didn't try to deny it. They actually lifted up these battered, bloodied bodies to terrorize other people. They wanted to taunt and torment communities of color, and that left a real injury. It created real anguish. And we want people to understand that. And then we have a wall that talks about the importance of remembering. And then we leave the square and we have duplicates of all of the monuments that are designed to urge each of these communities to engage in their own remembrance work. And we're actually now putting up markers and distributing monuments across the region so that in every county where there has been this history, there'll be some visible testament to the history. And for us, this community remembrance work is part of what we think is essential about how we change the narrative in America. Because I think if we can make the landscape complicit in creating a new relationship to our history, if we can get communities to understand the power of talking about this history, and most importantly, if we can create a new generation of young children, like the sixth graders that created that yellow brick wall, we can actually create a hope for the future, that we will never again be governed by fear and anger. We will never again let bigotry and bias shape our thinking, our relationship to one another. So it's a great honor to have some small role in acknowledging the work of all of you, terrific advocates, activists, teachers, citizens who are doing the great work that you're doing, but to congratulate you each for the remarkable work you've done and this extraordinary night celebrating the Obermeyer Awards.
Who would have thought that? I've been trying to document that story for years, and it's for 3 reasons. First, because it shows that remembrance work matters. It also shows that inspiration matters. And most importantly to me, because my dream was to bring the originator of that yellow brick project, my friend Krista, to a hill in Montgomery, Alabama, to see what Brian did after he visited her school. And I couldn't make that last thing happen. Krista got sick a little over a year ago, and things got worse in the spring, and she died in July. She would have loved this event, this weekend, the film, all of it. In her honor, I want to tell you a little secret thing we've been working on. Except for a few people who are here tonight from Krista's school, none of the educators at that school knows about the connection you just saw. We only completed the film on Friday. We hope to bring our film to school tomorrow to show Krista's colleagues, the teachers who work on that brick wall project, what a wonderful thing they've done. What a wonderful thing they've done. I just wish Krista were here to see it. All right. Now, I want to change the subject and focus on tonight. We have a wonderful group of award winners this year, so fitting for our 20th anniversary. And seriously, you'll see, but they are amazing. Amazing. You'll hear from all of them. And I am so very, very proud to have them here and to be able to share this night with them. Thank you.
Dear friends, it's my pleasure tonight to acknowledge and thank the jurors of the Obermayer German Jewish History Award. The jurors have played a central role in the history of the awards for the last 20 years. Please rise as I call your names, and please hold your applause until the finish. President Wieland, Hanno Löwy, Sarah Nahama, and Hank Obermeyer. Hank. We also acknowledge Dr. Frank Mecklenburg of the Leo Baeck Institute, who couldn't be here this evening, but we're delighted that Dr. William Weitzer, the director of the Institute, is here tonight. Dr. Weitzer? We also thank all the nominators for the award who took the time and effort to make the work of so many extraordinary individuals and institutions known to us. Nominators this year have come from around the world, even from as far as Australia. And I'd ask all the nominators for both sets of awards to please rise now so we can acknowledge you. Nominators? There we go. Anyone else? All the nominators, yes. I would also ask the awardees from previous years, many of whom are here this evening, to stand at your seats and be acknowledged. Please. And we are grateful to the wonderful support of the entire staff of the Protocol Office of the Parliament, headed by Karen Brandis. Thank you so much. We continue now with the presentations of the awardees, and I call forward Dr. Norbert Giovannini.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, I'm grateful with all my heart, not only for the days I'm spending here in Berlin, not for the program, for all the people I was able to meet and the many talks with the other awardees and awardees of previous years. I think it is a fantastic project, a fantastic idea. And I think Widen the Circle makes it even more fantastic because it finds a response to current day problems and makes clear that we are transporting problems from the past into the future and that we have to do something about it. I'm very proud, therefore, that I have been nominated and that I'm winning the prize today. My home is Heidelberg, and I assume Heidelberg needs no introduction. I somehow ended up in Heidelberg as a young student, late 1960s, and what made me really angry is that historic truths were suppressed back then, forgotten, belittled, and I wanted to call for this history to be brought back to life and the atrocities to be commemorated and brought into the present, shed a light on. And at some point in your life, you become patient enough that you go to the archives and look into the history of your city and reconstruct this history. And I'm grateful that for the many people who helped me do this. Jewish Life in Heidelberg, a book that I published, a collection of essays that is not only dedicated to the times of the Holocaust, but the entire 19th century, the movement of modernization and emancipation of Jewish life in the cities. A moving collection of stories called Erinnertes Leben, Remembered Life, stories of Jews in Heidelberg. And I admit it, when I read these stories, even today, I'm moved and deeply touched, because it tells the sufferings and the pain, but also the happy moments of the lives of so many people. Another book, Erinnern, Bewahren, Gedenken, an encyclopedia of Jews in Heidelberg, 1933 to 1945, Jews in the Third Reich in Heidelberg, reconstructing family stories, relations, stories of escape, of fleeing, of staying, of destruction, of surviving. And last summer, I carried out a research on the silent helpers, the Stille Helfer in German, people who showed courage, who knew that they had to help for whatever reasons or motives, and they did so. They ran a risk, they remained firm and resolute in their stance and didn't look for any personal gains. And I don't need to say in this room here how topical this issue is. And what gives me great motivation and has given me motivation is meeting former Jews of Heidelberg who brought their stories back to Heidelberg. People who had very moving and interesting stories, and we tried to preserve these stories and to tell them to future generations. So this is why we didn't only write books. I'm happy that we were able to organize tours, projects, initiatives, and to tell these stories to young people, to old people, to all people, like a citizens' initiative who documents all the stories of all survivors and set up plaques at the former place of the former synagogue in Heidelberg, creating a place of remembrance. I'm lucky enough to have worked together with the Jewish community and to tell them about the old, ancient community and bridge a gap between the past and the future and the present that have been interrupted. And what makes me especially happy is working with young people, with students, with pupils, which is why Verena Meyer from Heidelberger Lupe, an association, will speak about our cooperation. Thank you very much.
Now
For our association, a student club, it was a no-brainer, I'd say, to nominate Dr. Giovannini for this award, because he supported us always with the network, with the connection he has. Norbert, you helped us to grow, to develop. And his commitment went far beyond what people normally do as volunteers. We talked about our manuscripts. He provided critical support. He was always emphatic and supported us in rethinking our ideas, developing new ideas and implementing them. He was much more than just an expert, rather a mentor that always met us students on an equal footing. We thank you very much indeed, Norbert, and look forward to working with you in the future.
My project focuses on Breslau. It's a city that has been Polish since 1945 and is commonly known as Wrocław these days. There's a vibrating life and a Polish Jewish community that has relatively few members, but they are still alive. So I contribute to keeping up the memory about the long and diverse history of the German Jews in Breslau. And I'm proud to be among those that contribute in this field, and I am all the more proud to be the one accepting this award here tonight. On that note, I would like to thank you, the family Obermeyer, the members of the jury, and particularly Dr. Breslauer, who recommended me. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone who nominated me and everyone who's present here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 1960s, many old German books were sold on the streets of Wrocław. I saw a quite unremarkable book that was more than 100 years ago, and it had German and Hebraic letters. In addition, it had quite a new stamp that said Jewish Reform High School Library Breslau. However, I could only go more into detail with regard to this high school, its location, and the students and teachers after the end of the 1990s. This happened at the same time as the planning of the Architecture Museum in Wrocław, which was planning an exhibition on the Breslau schools. I did some research in the files of the Breslau Municipal Administration and the Polish State Archive and found out more about this diverse and fascinating but also appalling part of city history. In the time after 1933, the Jewish Redinger and the Jewish Unger School were the best schools in Breslau because they were still teaching democratic, humanistic, and progressive curriculums. It is impressive to see that despite the National Socialist terrorism, there were fit for life, capable, proud, and rebellious teachers and pupils teaching and learning at this school. When visiting Israel in 2006, many of these former files came to life for me. Werner Ansauger entrusted me with the script of his memoirs. Publishing this script in the Polish and German version was a particular obligation that I felt towards the former inhabitants of Breslau and those now in Israel. This conflictive, combative, but also normal coexistence and cooperation of Christian, Jewish, and undenominational Democrats, Social Democrats, and Republicans, that is not to be forgotten, is seen in the book and in the exhibitions. The idea of creating a city map with the traces of the Breslau synagogue community up to the Shoah did also come from my visit in Israel in 2006. Together with the Association of Former Breslau Citizens in Israel, and with support of the Breslau City Museum and the Ministry of the Interior of Saxony, I was able to publish this book, the city map, in 2014 in the German, English, and Polish version. However, it needs to be underlined that this kind of remembrance and this pointing to places of remembrance where Polish families are living now is not to be taken for granted. The next step was a brochure that I was able to present in December 2018 at several events. However, this also still is incomplete because many influential personalities are still missing. I would like to particularly mention Judicial Counsel Dr. Adolf Heilberg, of whom a commemorative plaque has been remembering since May 2019 at the cemetery in this city. When at times we are looking for role models of democratic policymakers, he definitely is one of them. Breslau's history and presence are significant. The lives of those were beaten by hatred, but our cooperation can beat this hatred. Thank you.
Family Obermeyer, President, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all of you for the honor that is being bestowed on me today. In January 2011, we founded the initiative Geilenkirchen Remembering Initiative, composed of representatives of the churches, schools, parliamentary groups, and private individuals. Our aim was to lay stumbling stones. On March 5th, 2013, the first 27 of now 96 stumbling stones were laid in the city centres together with representatives from the high schools and a large number of citizens. From the onset, the main idea was not only to serve the purpose of researching the past, but focusing remembrance on the future. This means our aim has to be winning over and including young people in our commemorative work and sensitizing them for their responsibility for history, for the history of their city and the future of our society. 1 year later, we had drawn up a registry, including all Jewish families of Geilenkirchen with their former places of residence. From my research, I was able to compile 2 publications. One small paperback called Following the Traces in the City, Jews in Geilenkirchen, including a map, and a small leaflet in the English language for the descendants who visited the city of their forefathers. It's called Lots of Jewish Citizens of Geilenkirchen during the Nazi era. We were able to add more and more information to it over the years. It was also meant to get the descendants and family members back in touch with friends from all over the world, which happened quite often. Geilenkirchen had one of the biggest Jewish communities in the region, with an imposing synagogue, a Shabbat school for the region, and a Jewish cemetery, which had existed demonstrably for about 1,700 years at Heinsberger Straße. With this email by Richard Dahl of May 30th, 2012, the commemorative work was given fresh momentum, which brought us far beyond our initial goal. In September 2014, we used funding from the federal government program Promoting Tolerance, Fostering Expertise to invite 4 of 5 Jews that were born in Geilenkirchen, and they stayed for a week. Many friendships were formed back then that have still been cultivated to this day. Ever since, descendants of our Jews come visit us from countries all over the world, even Israel. A mail from Berlin in October 2016, including a postcard that Adolf, Olga, and Rudolf Dahl wrote from Izbica on July 27, 1947, to Adolf's brother Max Dahl in Brussels, led to the laying of stumbling stones on February 1st, 2018, in Friedrichstraße 50 in the city of Aachen. The family had disappeared and fled to Great Britain, and their daughter Vera came and is here today. They were able to rediscover their roots, their family history, their Jewish ancestors, and their significance for the history of our city. Today, there is a cooperation between Jewish Friends, the RWTH Aachen University, and several Geilenkirchener schools where we exhibit projects which will probably soon also be moved to the Netherlands, Belgium, Great Britain, the US, and probably also Israel. Visits by guests from these and other countries were initiated by Mr. Nierens are formative experience for students, how they can actually experience history. And I think this inspires empathy and is an important human component empathy is a crucial prerequisite for responsible action. I was able to make many contacts to descendants of former Jews of Geilenkirchen. Some just happened, and some only came about after years of work, like with Miss Peer. Mr. Nieren brought people together, relatives that didn't even know they existed, people of different religions, nations, old and young. These encounters offered and still offer the opportunity to learn from one another, to learn that tolerance, compassion, and respect of people with different beliefs are the very prerequisites for a life in peace and freedom. For me, they have been precious encounters and relationships linked to moving, touching stories. They make me feel hopeful about the future. Talking about them could fill an entire evening, even more. Maybe another time, in Berlin or in Geilenkirchen. Thank you very much indeed for listening.
We now present the Distinguished Service Award, and details about this award may be found in your program. It's a great pleasure to invite Michael Batz of Hamburg to come forward and accept the award, and President Wieland and Joel Obermeyer to present it. And do we have the award? The citation states, "For your work as a playwright, journalist, and theater director, keeping the memory alive of the time of the Holocaust in Hamburg without allowing commemoration to become an arbitrary ritual." And
Herr Präsident, meine Damen.
President, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to Judith and Joel Obermeyer for this wonderful award. I'd also like to thank Karen Franklin on behalf of the entire jury and particularly the nominees that nominated me. I'd like to thank Christine Brink and Josef Hamburg. And I'm delighted that Professor Miriam Bürek is here tonight, one of my supporters. There she is. Thank you very much for being here. These days, we are working on a joint project with regard to the former synagogue in Hamburg. It was almost forgotten, only remains are still there. It is a ruin, but it also is a precious memory that we can still work on. This is what we are currently doing. Well, I haven't prepared any speech. I come from theater. I deal a lot with young people. I deal with working on scripts, on documents, and try to bring them into the present, make the documents speak. And this is how we try to bridge a gap between different generations. We ourselves, as the generations today, need to rely on memory and remembrance, but it's also a way of exploring. It's not only looking back, it's getting in touch with it, and that's what we have been doing for 20 years in Hamburg now. We tried to do it differently. We tried to let the documents speak indeed and give them a voice, see the voices behind these documents, hear the voices of the victims, and this is what we are doing. I'm a bit late because today we had another event in Hamburg, something we do not only do for invited guests, but for many. Everyone can come. Today about 1,000 students participated in our production, and they were quiet. And this is quite something when talking about young people. I think this had an impact, and it's something that they take home with them. I'm not only working on and with the past, but we are working with productions that we relaunch every year. We work with the artists, with the actors and actresses who then take these documents and scripts and turn them into their own. This is the wonderful aspect of our work. This is what we also do with the Bettini Award, something where I am a member as well and where we're working with students only. This is a wonderful work. It's still alive. It is working, and therefore it's great to connect it to this award.
And thank you for your fantastic foundation, Obermayer Foundation. It's really a great, great work. And together, let's go to extend and widen the circles of humanity. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Last year, Joel Obermeyer shared with me an idea about launching a new award that would focus on people and organizations using lessons of German Jewish history in innovative ways to combat prejudice in modern times. He was enthusiastic and passionate, and he made a good case. I agreed with him that something like this is needed given the increase in hate crimes and intolerance occurring in Germany and elsewhere. But I wasn't sure we would be able to make it happen. I knew we would need to get support from key people, especially from President Wieland. And we will have to create new policies, procedures, attract applicants, create a new selection committee, and the list goes on and on. This is the reason I'm so delighted to see the results tonight. We have awardees who are innovative and effective. Their work is inspiring. It is inspiring both by itself and for what it says about the world at a time when there are many reasons to be discouraged. In addition to launching the new award, the Obermeyer Foundation launched a brand new division called Widen the Circle. Its job is to amplify the impact of awardees of all types and to inspire similar work elsewhere in the world. I'm excited to see what will happen next. Before I proceed, I would like to thank someone who made this all possible. He has been thanked earlier this evening, but I would like to do it again. President Wieland. When we proposed this idea to you, we realized it would have been easy to say no. A new award could be too complicated, too expensive, too difficult. But you did not say no. You asked some tough questions, kept an open mind, and finally said yes. Not only did you put the resources of the Berlin Parliament behind the idea, which was great, you eagerly invested your own time and energy into it. For this and for all of your support of the Anniversary Awards, Joel and I are both deeply grateful. And of course, I too would like to thank Karin Brandis and her team for their help to make our Widen the Circle project real. In addition, I would like to acknowledge the members of the evaluation committee who invested their time and expertise to select this year's outstanding candidates. I'll ask them to rise in their places as I read their names. Please hold your applause until the end, just like last time. Christina Finch, the head of the tolerance. Keep your applause till the end, okay? She is the head of the Tolerance and Non-Discrimination Department at the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe's Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. Aneta Kahana. She's the founder and chairwoman of the board of the Amadeo Antonio Foundation. Joel Obermeyer. We all know him now. Executive Director of Widen the Circle and a director of Obermeyer Foundation. Then Patrick Ziegele, the director of the Anne Frank Zentrum. And of course, President Ralph Wieland of the Berlin Parliament. You don't have to stand. It's okay. I call forward now the fan project of Sports Youth Berlin and Hertha BSC Berlin to tell us more about the project. Thank you.
Ja, meine Damen und Herren.
Ladies and gentlemen, of course we are amazed and all too happy about this award. We would now like to present our project called Learning from Our Own History. Let me reassure you, well, this is Michael Müller standing next to me. He might not be familiar to you, but let me reassure you that we never expected to be standing here at one point when we started this project. Our project is a cooperation project of the Berlin Football Club Hertha BSC and the fan project of the Sports Youth in Berlin. Football is a very important element for many in Germany as part of our society and our everyday culture. But often it also works like a burning lens, which means that in football we see societal trends or challenges that are somehow compressed and that we also see in society in general. And there's also a lot of media attention to it. Therefore, sometimes there are things such as violence, racism and anti-Semitism that we see in football and that we need to confront. However, at the same time, there also is something positive in football. There's a lot of hope. Because, for instance, we can enhance solidarity in our society. So football moves many people, but we also say that a lot can be moved through football. That was the approach that we used in order to deal with National Socialism from a Hertha BSC perspective. Because we are a quite traditional club, therefore this confrontation is necessary. Through this solidarity with the club, of the fans, but also of the staff, we had certain access to this history. So the idea was to raise awareness and through this confrontation with history to find a confrontation with the present. We did so with different offers and ideas. We talked to contemporary witnesses, we had guided tours, we visited memorials, but there were also 2 research projects on former Jewish members of the Hertha BSC club. And we also have an education center. And we would now like to present to you a few of these activities. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Within this project, we are visiting memorials on an annual basis, for instance, to Viciem. But even when being at such a place, at such a horrific place like the extermination camp in Auschwitz, how ought you to explain the dimension of this crime to young people? We might not reach this with sheer facts and figures only, but by trying to connect this place to the current reality of these young people, by including these young fans of the Hertha BSC. In our club, we were successful in doing so by linking it to the former Jewish team doctor of the club who was murdered in Auschwitz. The young people for whom this football club is such an important part of their life then deal with the biography of this former member. However, we knew very little about Dr. Hermann Horwitz. A lot of known documents only had the perspective of the perpetrator. Therefore, after visiting the memorial, many of those participating wanted to learn more about the life and the work of Dr. Hermann Horwitz. And therefore, we started some research, not only focusing on Horwitz, but also on other former Jewish members of the Hertha BSC. Dr. Hermann Horwitz plays a particular role among those former Jewish members of the club, because he was not only the team doctor, but also the team doctor during the championships in 1930 and 1931. Those from Berlin know that these were the only championship finals that Berlin ever played. Through this fan project and through the support of the club, the participants were able to research with numerous sources how and where Horwitz grew up and how he contributed to the formerly quite unknown field of sports medicine. They also looked into how he became a part of the Hertha BSC and how he did some pioneering work there. For instance, by drafting new concepts for a sports diet and for sport medical preventive care. We then were able to publish this really wonderful book on Dr. Hermann Horwitz, A Search for Traces. It tells the story of Dr. Hermann Horwitz not only from the perspective of a victim, but as a creator, a pioneer, an activist, not only at the Hertha BSC, but in Berlin in general. After the publication, Horwitz was also honored in the exhibition on capital football on the 125-year anniversary as one of the 11 most important historic people of the Hertha BSC club. However, this is not everything we did. This is only the start, really. We did another search for traces for Gerd Kaschke. And the findings that we had are now worked on at the memorial in Sachsenhausen by pupils and young people. We also have the education center that I would like to briefly present to you. Here we do not only work with fans, but also want to get in touch with young people who are fascinated by football, but are not necessarily fans of the Hertha BSC. We try to get in touch with those who would otherwise not be interested in political education. So we are using the topic of football and this location, the football stadium, in order to make them deal with things that move us. We will celebrate the 10th anniversary of this education center next month. We were able to have 650 project days with more than 3,000 young people there. So here as well, we are working with our findings, for instance, from these searches for traces. We talk to contemporary witnesses and have presentations and events in order to raise more public awareness. In this context, I would like to most warmly thank and mention Walter Frankenstein. Walter, could you briefly raise your hand? Walter came from Stockholm here tonight. He is the oldest fan of the Hertha BSC in the world. And at the same time, he's a survivor of the Shoah here in Berlin. He was able to hide in the underground. He was a true inspiration for us with his story of life, but particularly with his attitude as a human. Walter, I'd like to most warmly thank you and extend my highest respect. And of course, since we are here on behalf of everyone else, we would like to thank all those who contributed to this project, and we are quite a lot. We want to work for and with the commitment of our fans, and we're delighted to see that other clubs are now following our approach as well. So how will we continue? We definitely want to continue. We have had some very good experience in this field and want to continue to discuss. We want to continue to motivate, and we want to strengthen those who stand up for democracy and equality in football. Of course, we were not able to reach every football fan, but we were able to engage some discussion, and this also gives us hope. The event tonight here is amazing as well. Karen, I'd like to briefly mention you because I talked to you 2 days ago, and this led to us leading this search for traces and expanding it to those who are still alive and expanded beyond the great ocean. Particularly would like to thank the Obermayer Foundation for this award and the recognition connected to it. Last but not least, I would also like to thank all the other award winners who I was so thankful to get to know tonight, because all of your work is very, very important. So thank you indeed.
Ja, auch ich möchte mich.
I would also like to most warmly thank the Obermayer Foundation, the jury, and of course the family Obermayer for this award, also on behalf of my entire team. Furthermore, I'd like to thank the Berlin Senate for this invitation. Geschichte-Mat is a student project for the mediation of Jewish history and culture in Hamburg. The objective of this unique project in Germany is to give students a self-determined access to Jewish history, culture, and presence in their city and their neighborhood. Geschichte-Mat also is a website, www.geschichtemat.de, which contains a digital city map of the city of Hamburg. The special element of the Geschichte-Mat is that this digital city map is managed and designed by the students themselves. In the context of project weeks, the students go and search for traces in their neighborhoods. They look into historic people, places, and events and deal with current Jewish life. They are guided by experts and media educators to research, make interviews, talk to experts and contemporary witnesses, visit museums and archives, and make and cut films. Towards the end of their project week, the final videos are then uploaded to our website. As such, this digital city map comes to life. It's about Jewish life from the perspective of young people. With our project, the young people are to get the opportunity to have quite a broad insight into the Jewish history and culture in their neighborhoods and to do research on them on their own. They get to do local work, they get to choose their own topics, to develop their own questions, and to find this relation to their own current life. This gives them a quite individual access to history. The project was developed by Ivana Scharf, who is there at the back from the Office for Societal Impact. From the start, it was funded by the Hamburg Institute for the History of German Jews. In particular, I'd like to mention two who are present here today, Andreas Bremer, who supported the project from the beginning, and Miriam Meurup, who also supported us from the beginning. The media educators are also very important. Our supporters here come from the JAF, a Hamburg Association for Media Education Practice. Our project has been existing since 2013. Since then, 45 project weeks took place at different schools in Hamburg. More than 800 students from the 7th to the 12th grade participated in it. They went to different Jewish cemeteries, they visited the synagogue, they dealt with the fates of persecuted Jews, they looked into the rescue program of the transport of children or the Nazi book burnings in 1933. They also did numerous interviews. They have visited archives, museums, and memorials. When looking at our city map today, you will find 204 videos, and there will be an additional 5 next week. In order to give you a brief insight into our work and the effect it has, during our last project week, we interviewed the participating students and teachers with regard to their work. The students are from a 9th grade class from a school in Bahrenfeld. Soon, the students will learn about the National Socialism in class, and I thought it was a good idea to learn something about Jewish history and Judaism in preparation. I never dealt with this topic with Judaism and National Socialism. Jewish history was something we've never learned about in religious class. I knew that my father celebrates Sukkot, but I didn't know what it was exactly. I didn't know Jews had only little rights during National Socialism. We don't have Jewish students in class, but most of them are Muslims, Christians, or atheists. But everyone in class was keen to start with the project. Now I can understand the Jewish people. I never had to have any prejudices against other people, but now I can better relate to the Jewish history. I could feel that the Geschichte team has a lot of experience working with students. The project was incredibly well prepared. It was perfect for us, for our class. I'd recommend it and would do it again. It was a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
We found ourselves in the year 1999. All of Wurzen is occupied by neo-Nazis. All of Wurzen? No. Some unyielding youths will not falter in their resistance against right-wing extremists. This is how we could describe the history of the Netzwerk für demokratische Kultur, NDK, but that would only tell half the story. Even though the small town in Saxony had a mayor who denied the existence of the right-wing extremist scene and who called those who continued to bring up the issue traitors, and there was a silent majority who just didn't want to be bothered. But there were other people in Wurzen as well who were no longer willing to sit back and watch, and there was help and support from outside. Former Federal President Wolfgang Thierse came to Wurzen. The Amadeo Antonio Stiftung Foundation initiated a fundraiser. Our goal was to draw public attention on issues that nobody else in the community talked about, and to motivate people to get actively involved. Forging networks with other stakeholders was also a key goal from the beginning. For almost 20 years, we've been using a variety of different methods on a variety of different fields. Coming to terms with the history of National Socialism, for example, by laying stumbling stones, sociocultural activities. We support active citizenship through the project Faces of Our Cities. We instigate or motivate youth to get involved. Educational offerings, open space events at schools. We motivate people with migrational backgrounds to get involved. For example, by a women's table or meeting events. We offer project counseling or places for volunteers. We form networks at the regional, local, and national level. From the beginning, it was fundamental to create a physical place where people had the opportunity to implement their ideas in safety, which is why in 2001 we bought a vacant house in the city centre of Wurzen. After thousands of hours of volunteer work, in 2006 it was opened as a cultural and civic centre. On the ground floor, there's hardly enough place for all the volunteers to carry out their job. In the basement, there is a bar and a seminar room. The former mansion has 3 more floors and an attic where we are planning to open a conference center and including beds by the end of 2021. We want to step up our international activities as well. Through the revenues from renting out the future conference center, we want to become more independent from public funds. We found ourselves in the year of 2020. All of Wurzen is occupied by neo-Nazis. All of Wurzen? No. Countless unyielding people are not ceasing to stand up against rampant right-wing extremism. And in 20 years, they've become a strong opposition movement. We defy sometimes massive personal insults online and threats and work for a democratic culture, often in spite of an open lack of understanding by friends and family. We will not be intimidated by swastika graffitis at our house, by letters we receive, ripped down video cameras, by insults, graffitis at our display cabinet, by loose screws at our cars. We will not be discouraged when sometimes political leaders are lacking open solidarity and a clear stand, and when the local press writes that their readership does not want to hear positive news about refugees. We do not duck away, dodge our responsibility, because we're not alone, as you can see here and tonight. Today is January 27th, 2020. The Obermayer Foundation is honoring us with their anniversary awards, making us part of Widen the Circle. Like stones that are thrown into the water, our ideas are having a ripple effect, an impact that we would never have imagined. We are happy to take on this challenge. Thank you very much.
Last but not least, our Distinguished Service Award is going to go to Sabine Schmidhals. She's a teacher No, Sabet Schmidhals, I'm sorry. For many years, she has taught Jewish history to young Muslims in a district that has a population of 80% Muslim residents. She brings students on trips to memorial sites, including Auschwitz, and uses history to identify and counter understanding among her students. Please welcome Sabet Schmidhals and a couple of her students.
Ladies and gentlemen, almost exactly ago 34 years now, I visited the memorial site in Auschwitz under the Action Reconciliation Service for Peace. I was 19 years old. The former Polish detainee Tadeusz Szymanski talked to us. He closed with a wish. He said each and every one of us should one day come with their own group and show this place to somebody else so that people who were murdered there will never be forgotten. In my heart, back then, I gave Mr. Szymanski my promise. And indeed, I visited Auschwitz and other memorial sites with groups many times. Standing here today and receiving this award is a great honor and delight for me, and I'd like to thank the Obermayer Foundation for it, and Dr. Elke Wydlewski, the Deputy Director of the House of the Wannsee Conference, who nominated me for the award. Since 2015, I have been chairing the working group Remembering at the Theodor Heuss Gemeinschaftsschule in Berlin-Moabit, a high school. And I'm so delighted that so many of you from the working group, so many students are here tonight. They say young people, especially young people who are not originally from Germany, are not prepared to engage with German history. That's not entirely true. But perhaps their access to German history is different than the access of young people who've always been in Germany. In 2014, a Palestinian pupil presented her fellow 15-year-old pupils the story of their family. When she talked, she suddenly started to cry. When I asked her if she never had talked about it before, she said, "Nobody ever asked." Then I realized we cannot expect young people to take interest or show empathy for the stories or suffering of others when we're not interested in their stories. Hans' first trip took us to Israel in 2014. Or is the country not called Palestine for many of us? We couldn't find agreement. Today we call it the Holy Land, holy for Christians, for Muslims, and for the Jews. Everybody should be able to live here in peace. In Israel, we realized we wanted to learn more about Jewish history and the time of the Third Reich. And this is why it wasn't our last trip. We traveled to France, where we followed the traces of Jewish immigrants. We also talked to refugees who live in France today. With what we've seen through history, shouldn't we make it easier for people to escape persecution, war, and hunger? In Poland, we visited the former extermination camps Majdanek and Treblinka. And 1 year later, we talked to former partisans in Italy who were courageous enough to put up resistance against the fascists. The working group Remembering is not a working group that only sits around in the school. The young people go out and get actively engaged. For 4 years, they have been organizing an annual commemorative event for November 9th, 1938. They supported the creation of the memorial Güterbahnhof Moabit and helped organize the inaugural event. Gleis 69, as it's called, track 69, is a place where more than 30,000 people have been deported from into the ghettos and extermination camps. All of this would not be possible without the cooperation with others, which is why I'd like to thank the Memorial Haus der Wannsee Conference and my son, Maxim Schmitthaus, who, when he worked as a volunteer at the House of Wannsee Conference 5 years ago, he founded the working group together with me. I would like to thank the Lernort 7 mal Jung Gesicht zeigen, the Association Gleis 69, Elizabeth Kahn and David Sutherland of the Association Tanztheater Dialoge, and Bernd Danielowski. Thank you very much for your support and the excellent cooperation. The working group Remembering has changed me. I learned what National Socialism meant for people, but I learned time and time again and saw that there is still racism persists, and that we have to do something against it. In the working group, I was able to broaden my horizon. I feel that I've learned so much more about the world, but also about myself, my family, my friends, and all the other members of the working group. I was able to see that learning can feel very differently, and how deeply an effect such a working group can have on students. I'm delighted to be part of the working group, and I would like to thank Ms. Schmidthal on behalf of all the other working group members for showing us and teaching us so much. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, at times when too often we are confronted with terrible news of hatred and violence, such an evening inspires courage. I would like to thank all award winners. It shows the great variety of people in Germany who are a symbol of the other side. A big thank you to the Obermayer Foundation again, and of course thanks to the musicians who provided a great musical framework for this night's event. And I may now invite you to a reception at the Festsaal on 3rd floor. You can take the staircase or the elevator. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.